Thanks, Sean. So I'm Deborah Moynihan. I'm the organisation BIM manager with RKD Architects. And today, myself and Maria are going to go through Naviate architecture and Naviate Accelerate. So for me, as an architectural background, I'm going to go through the architecture side, and I've selected out the 4 tools that I think can really save time and really kind of add value into an architect or an architectural technologist's kind of day-to-day workflow in order to be more efficient and to get the kind of the more mundane tasks done quicker. So the first one, I'm going to go through the room drawing tool, the room finishes, curtain grid designer, and the pattern editor. As you can see, there's a lot more tools to it, but these are the kind of my 4 favorite at the moment. So I'm going to start with creating room drawings. So we have a series of videos that we're going to let run, and then I'll kind of talk through what's happening on the screen. So we've taken the Autodesk sample model, and we're going to generate some room drawings out of that. So for a Revit user, they need to have obviously all of their rooms placed in the model first, and they need to have their view template set up as well in order for the tool to kind of run at its best. So as you can see, the interface is very simple. You have your list of rooms here on the left-hand side, and you have your, is that running?
It's running, I think.
Sorry, I thought the video wasn't running.
Just click it once more.
It is, that's running, apologies, sorry. I thought it wasn't running. So you have your list of rooms on the side, and then you have your settings then on the right-hand side to either create your views, create your sheets, and do a lot of that. So as I said, it's important to have your rooms placed in the model. It's also important to check that you have your room volumes pulled right up to the ceiling or to the soffit level, because that's going to affect your elevations when you get to that point. So as you can see on the right-hand side, I can create my elevations, and it's going to ask me, do I want to select all of the walls in the room? Do I just want the 4 main walls? Naviate allows you to kind of discount any nib walls or any awkward corners or anything like that, so it's not going to generate an excessive amount of views for you. It allows you to select your view template, and it allows you to set your offsets on the crop on the 4 sides so it's all even. Doing that manually when you're creating room data sheets is a real time killer. So to be able to have all your elevations just set nicely and all the same is a great tool. Further down then, you can select your floor plan, your ceiling plan, and your 3D view if that's what you require, and your view template for each one. So you can have everything looking the same and looking consistent across your set of drawings. Finally then at the bottom, you can also create your title sheet. So it will let you select your standard company title block, the drawing number that you wish to start at, and even how you want to sort that within your project browser so everything is kept organized. Once you kind of have ticked all your boxes and have all your settings covered, then Naviate will let you run that application, and you'll hit create, and that will start processing away in the background. Now, 1 or 2 things, like this is a very simple model. This will run in a matter of seconds. If you have linked models, it can take a little bit longer, so I would suggest turning off linked models and always kind of running a test first. But you can see there, the room drawings for 3 rooms has been set up while I'm talking about it. So, you know, for a technician or an architect who's sitting down to start doing this manually from scratch, that could be 2 or 3 days work in just setting up views and sheets, depending on how many rooms you might have in a particular project that need elevating. So you can see there's my floor plan and my ceiling plan set up, and when it goes to the next sheet, you will see there's all my elevations. They're all cropped exactly the same. Here's an example below which I want to demonstrate of what happens if you haven't checked your rooms prior to running the tool. Your elevation will stop where your room volume stops. So that's an important check for any Revit user to do before they run the tool. You can see there now I'm having to pull my crop back up manually. So that's your most important check, is to check the volume of your rooms. Worst case scenario, you just delete your views and you run it again. So it's nothing is the end of the world. But you've already saved like a ton of time just being able to automate the setting up of views and sheets, and you can actually now start your real work, which is the information that's going into that room, your tagging, your annotation, the important stuff. So that is the room drawings. I'm going to move on and talk about create room coverings. So we've found over the years that requirements kind of are become more and more onerous in models. You want to put more into it. You want to start putting in floor finishes, wall finishes, ceiling finishes, because you want to be able to tag everything separately. You want to be even able to do quantities sometimes. You want to be able to do renderings. Obviously in RKD we do large scale buildings, so to give somebody a pack of floor finishes to do could take 2 days if it's a 5-6 story building and you've got a lot of different room types. So what the room coverings tool will allow you to do is, if you have all your types set up, you can select a room or select multiple rooms, and I can select my floor type, I can select my wall finish if it's tiling in a bathroom, I can set the height of that wall, so if it's only coming up like halfway, and I can select my ceilings as well. The wall tool is great because you can join it with the existing wall. It will cut the door opes and the window opes, so you don't have to do that as an extra step manually. Equally with your ceilings, you can either choose to cover the whole ceiling or you can offset in from the side. So if you're offsetting in equally around to create raft ceiling, you can also do that. So from 2022 onwards, Naviate lets you do floors, walls and ceiling. So I think prior to 22 it was just floor coverings. So the tool is developing and it's coming along to include more and more stuff that, you know, us as architects want to be able to model and want to be able to model quickly. So I think the tool is going to jump to, the video is going to jump to show a room finish now in a second. We're just selecting our floor finish. Again, you can choose to offset things up and down from the level that they're placed on. You can choose your height. You can choose to join at corners, join with the main wall. You can choose to ignore columns or include the columns in a room if the finish is also to be applied to them. So it gives you that option too. And you can see there we've selected one of the rooms in this model on the side. I'll just wait for the video to move on so we can see the final result.
And Deborah, if you were to do this manually.
Oh, if you were to do this manually, like if you have any kind of a large building where you've got a series of rooms, you might have 5, 6, 7 stories in a building, and you're given a pack of finishes to a technician, and he's looking at this going, I have a lot of modelling to do. This can save someone 2 or 3 days worth of work. You can see there, Naviate has popped up. It's told me how many elements it's created for this room, and like that's just one room, but I could have picked that whole floor and batch applied if the floor finish was the same in every room, and batch applied, and that's done. So we've just kind of cropped this room down into a 3D view, so to see the final results. And you can see there's my ceiling. There's my tile finish. It's gone in at the height that I've requested. It has cut at my doors and my windows. So again, there's another job done that I don't have to do manually. And my floor finish is in there as well. So it's a great tool, and it's a great tool if you are doing a lot of interiors work. And it really, like, it feeds back in then to your room data sheets as well. Then it's another job kind of ticked ticked off the list in terms of your production. So we're going to move on now. And I'm going to look at the pattern editor. So I don't know how many people here have ever had to edit an existing pattern in Revit or create one from scratch. You have to do it in Notepad, and you have to sit down and you have to work out the numbers. You have to work out your X, your Y, your offset, and you're doing this in Notepad with no visual guide other than sitting with squared paper and trying to work it out manually. So I think the pattern editor is a great addition to this because it allows you to pick one of your patterns that already exists in the model and duplicate it to create something new. But also, for me, I love that on the right here, we have this visual guide. So as I'm creating another line in the pattern, I'm seeing it appear on the right-hand side as I'm changing the offsets, the X and the Y and the different spacings. I can see it appear in my pattern. So I'm not here in Notepad kind of guessing, loading that back into Revit, realizing I've made a mistake with one of the calculations and having to go back into Notepad until you get it right. And when you press edit then on the end of any line, it enhances the visual side again, so you can actually ignore the numbers altogether and start drawing your pattern. And the two of them speak to each other, which is great. So I can draw my pattern. It can get as complicated as I want to. I don't have to worry about maths. I don't have to worry about trying to calculate shift and spacing and all of that. I can actually draw my pattern. And that's giving me a tile sample of it. So you can scale that tile then to see it across a bigger sample of the pattern. You can export that pattern out then as well, so that you can bring it into another project. So for me, I really, really like the pattern editor tool because as architects, we're visual people. We don't like sitting down working out formulas necessarily all the time for things. So yeah, I really like that as a tool. You can save it out there as a .pat file, and then that can go into your central library. It can be reused again in another project. So for me, that's a great tool that adds value. Finally then, for my last kind of pick of the architecture tools is the Curtain Grid Designer. So again, this is a nice one because it has both the mathematical side of things, and it also has a visual side. So what it lets you do is pick an existing curtain wall in your project or a blank curtain wall, and allows you to start setting out your horizontal and your vertical grids, and it lets you start doing the spacings. You can hit the repeat button and it will batch apply them all. You can go into the vertical grids then and you can do the same, and you can see it all appearing on the right hand side as you're doing it. But the nice bit about this is it hasn't changed the curtain wall in your model yet until you hit that apply button on the right hand side. It also allows you to save this off as a template design. So if you have a series of curtain walls in your project, you can then apply that design across the board then to your different curtain walling. So yeah, it's a great tool. You can see there it's the template that we saved earlier, and we're applying it now to another wall, and it's generating almost instantly. We've used this tool as well to fix curtain walls that have kind of gone broken in the process, or where we've acquired models from other places. With one recently where poor girl, she got a curtain wall and there was tons and tons of extra grids had appeared out of nowhere in it. The curtain wall is completely broken, and we used this tool to basically clean it up. So we saved her like a good couple of hours of work just by being able to open that editor and delete all the kind of extra lines out of it and tidy that up. So yeah, that's my kind of top 4 kind of favorite tools, and that there are more, but I'm going to hand over to Maria now, and Maria is going to run through some of the tools in Accelerate.
Thanks, Deborah.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of background on Naviate. So it's developed originally by the Naviate team in Sweden. So we're relatively new to it here in Ireland, just being acquired by Symetri 2 years ago. So there's a lot more than just Naviate for Revit. You also have Naviate for Civil 3D. You have cloud, and you have the licensing aspect of it as well. And within Naviate for Revit, there are multiple features for different disciplines. So I know we're just speaking about architecture and Accelerate today, but you see all of the ones that we have. And there's more down the line as well. I think Jan Tori might mention a few more. So there are multiple functions and features there just to help with modeling. And like Deborah said, you know, you're ultimately creating your model to create your sheets and your views. And with Naviate, it just helps quicken that process. So you just spend more time actually modeling rather than doing these day-to-day tasks that you just have to do. So with Accelerate, Accelerate comes as part of a package with all the other disciplines. So you have your HVAC, ELEC, MEP, and you get Accelerate with all of these. So Accelerate is not discipline specific, but it has all of the features that you can use in any model. So just the few that I'm going to talk about here today. So you have color elements, filter elements, editing parameters, publishing your settings, and then managing your project. So with your color elements, you can use your color elements as a kind of a compliance check. So we use the example here of fire rating. So rather than going in and overriding your visibility graphics or creating your view filters, you can just open up this dialog box, you select your category or your family, and then you can choose a parameter either by instance or type. So it allows you to really drill down and be specific about your selection. And when you've done that, you can edit any of your information in your properties, and that will update. And then you can apply those as a view filter. So rather than going in, it just saves you, and I know it only takes a couple of minutes of setting up your view filters, but if you're doing it over and over again, it takes a lot of time. You can also apply those to a view template then. So obviously you can make that standard across your company, across your team, so everyone is working with that same information. So this is just going into the view template there, just to show you the filters within that. Yeah, so you have them there. Okay, so on to your filter elements. So with filtering, say with kind of out-of-the-box Revit, you're selecting your families and then you're filtering by category. But with this filter element, in this one dialog box, you can select your, not only your category, but right down to family and type. And then when you do that, you can specify further by a parameter. And once you're in that, then you can isolate the element. And rather than having to go in time and time again to go through all of those settings, once you have those, you can save that as a filter type. So then you have a quick filter that you can go in with all of these already set up, and you just select it at a click of a button. So this is, if any of the Revit users are familiar with Dynamo, you could do a lot of this within Dynamo, but with Naviate, it just makes it so much easier because you're just doing it at a click of a button rather than, you know, creating your scripts and things like that. Okay, so editing parameters. So this is probably one that I use most because it just makes editing your information in your families just so much quicker and easier. So I was recently doing project work for a client, and I had to input a lot of COBie data. And this just, because with this edit parameter box, the dialog box, it works a lot like Excel. With your copy and paste, your fill copy, fill increment, and it just makes it so much easier rather than having to create your schedule and go in and edit all that information. Now, in saying that, you can choose to edit a schedule or a category, so you can do it either way. And once you have that done, you can actually create a schedule from that information. So it just allows you to, it just makes things so much quicker and easier. Okay, so you can also combine parameters. So you can select any of your categories there, pick as many parameters as you want, take out that information and input it into another parameter of your choosing after that. and then you have your right parameter to zone. So you have a create 3D zone function here that allows you to create a 3D zone from a scope box. So you can edit the levels of that. You can have it just on a floor, or you can have it going up through the entire building. So once you do that, you can pick your 3D zone. It shows you the categories that are available within that 3D zone. You assign the parameter, the information to the parameter, and then it inputs that into every single parameter within that 3D zone. So you're saving so much time on this. And again, you know, kind of going back to, these are the things that you just have to do day to day, you know, when you're working with a 3D model. And with Naviate, it just quickens that workflow. Okay, so you have your publish settings. So when you're publishing your model, you are exporting to PDF, to AutoCAD, IFC, Navisworks. And with that, your file export, you put in your settings, and then you may have multiple different settings for the same view depending on what you're exporting. So with this publish settings box here, you can do it all in the one place. So you can have multiple different AutoCAD exports, different IFC, PDF, and so on. So you can adjust all of your settings within here, and once you do that, you can save these published settings, so that when, say, at the end of the week, you go in, you click publish, you select your settings there, which you're going to see in a second. So this is your published settings here. You don't have to go through all of those, all of that information again, inputting all of that. You just click publish and it's done. Okay, and lastly then you have a manage project. So with the manage project, it has its own kind of ribbon here, and these are the different functions that you have. So you have a CAD tracker. It tracks all of the CAD files within your entire model. You can see which CAD file is in which view, you can delete and so on. Same with your view filters. You can manage them all within the one place, seeing what views that they're in, and you can delete them. So you have a project cleanup. So obviously at the end of the week, you have to clear out your model if you want to send it on and share that information. So it takes a lot of time in taking out all of your views, your sheets, schedules, legends, and so on. But with Naviate, it assigns a do not purge parameter to all of your sheets and your views and so on, so that when you go into your project cleanup box, you are just selecting, so you're ticking all except checked, you're eliminating what you don't want to come into the purged model, and then when you open it up, you have a clean model with none of your sheets or your legends and views and so on. Okay, and yeah, so that's it from myself and Deborah. Thanks very much.
Thank you.